Welcome to KTET 3 English Literature, Part 3. Good morning. Today we are going to discuss on the poetry during the Middle Age. After the Norman conquest in 1066, please do remember this date of the Norman conquest, 1066. This year is important. The Anglo-Saxon language rapidly diminished as a written literary language. But at the end of the 13th century, Layman wrote Brute in Middle English, which shows a strong Anglo-Saxon influence. In the 14th century, major works of English literature started to appear, such as the so-called Pearl poets, Pearl, Patience, Cleanness, and Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Major works of this period were Piers Plowman by William Langland, The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, Confessio Amantis by John Gower, and Fall of Princes by John Lydgate. Now let's have a glimpse of Piers Plowman. Piers Plowman is written in unrhymed alliterative verse by William Langland. Written in unrhymed alliterative verse, this work is divided into sections called passes, which means step. So that's important. And there are 20 passes and 8 divisions. Please do remember these numbers. In all, known as the first allusion to a literary tradition of Robin Hood's tales, Piers Plowman is a mix of theological allegory and social satire based on the narrator's dream quest for the true Christian life. It is a journey through a series of dream visions. The dreamer seeks, among other things, the allegorical characters do well, do better, do best. In the prologue, it is mentioned that the poem begins in the Malvern Hills. A man named Will falls asleep and has a vision of a tower set upon a hill and a fortress in a deep valley. Between these symbols of heaven and hell is a fair field full of fog representing the world of mankind. A satirical account of different sections of society follows, along with a dream-like fable representing the king as a cat and his people as rodents. The Canterbury Tales. The Canterbury Tales is a collection of 24 stories that runs to over 17,000 lines written in Middle English during 1387 and 1400. The tales, mostly written in verse, except the Pardoner's Tale, are told by a group of pilgrims as they travel together from London to Canterbury to visit the shrine of St. Thomas Becket at Canterbury Cathedral. Chaucer has, through tales and characters, shown the English society of the time, customs and practices, the role of the church and churchmen. Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales resembles Boccaccio's The Decameron. The Canterbury Tales remain incomplete at the time of Chaucer's death, since in the general prologue, 13 pilgrims are introduced. Chaucer intended to write 4 stories for each pilgrim, 2 each on the way to and from their ultimate destination, which comes to a total of about 120 stories. The host, whose name is mentioned in the prologue to the Cook's Tale, is Harry Bailey, who suggests that each pilgrim will tell 2 stories on the way to Canterbury and 2 on the way back. The best storyteller, judged by the host, will be entertained with a meal at Bailey's Tavern. Confessio Amantis, which means the lover's confession, is a long poem consisting of 33,000 lines by John Gower. The book, in a frame story, is about a confession by an aging lover to the chaplain of Venus. Gower, in the prologue, says that the poem was composed at the request of Richard II and was inspired by both his Consolation of Philosophy and similar in structure like that of Decameron of Boccaccio and Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, with which the Confessio has several stories in common. He used the octosyllabic line. The Confessio Amandis is divided into a prologue and 8 books, and the narrative structure is overlaid on 3 levels: the external matter, the narrative frame, and the individual tales. Fall of Princes. This is a long poem composed of 9 books and 36,000 lines by John Lydgate. It is based on Boccaccio's work De Casibus Virorum Illustrium, that means on the fates of famous men, and is made of rhyme royal stanza. The poem tells the lives and deaths of many historical and legendary persons. A 16th century poem, The Mirror for Magistrates, is a sequel to The Fall of Princes. Now let's have a look of the major poets of this age: John Gower, William Langland, Geoffrey Chaucer, and John Lydgate. Let's have a glimpse of the major works of John Gower. A contemporary of William Langland and the Pearl poet, and a friend of Geoffrey Chaucer, John Gower is remembered mainly for his 3 major works: Mirror de l'Homme, Vox Clementis, and Confessio Amandis, all long poems written in French, Latin, and English respectively. When Chaucer went on a diplomatic mission to Bali in 1378, Gower was entrusted with the power of attorney over his affairs in England. While Chaucer dedicated his Troilus and Cressida in part to moral Gower, Gower placed a speech in praise of Chaucer in the mouth of Venus at the end of Confessio Amandis. The introduction to Chaucer's The Man of Law's Tale contains a clear reference to Gower's tales of Canazzi and Tyro Apollonius. The themes of Gower's works are religious, political, historical, and moral. Chaucer called him Moral Gower. In his works, Gower used allegory in addition to the plain style. In the first book of Vox Clementis, Gower presents an allegorical account of the peasants' revolt, which starts in allegory form. Allegory turns out to be an allusion to William Wordsworth's suppression of the rebels. Gower sides with the aristocracy. Other books decry the sins of various classes of the social order, such as priests, friars, knights, peasants, merchants, and lawyers. As Gower admits that much of Vox Clementis was borrowed from other authors, Macaulay calls it as schoolboy plagiarism. His third work is a Confessio Amandis, carries a theme of morality, and one scholar says that Confessio Amandis is almost exclusively made of Gower's poetic reputation. Geoffrey Chaucer. The father of English literature is the first widely famous poet whose reputation is based on the Canterbury Tales, though he produced some classic works which include The Book of the Duchess, also called The Death of Blanche, is the earliest of his works, preceded only by his short poem ABC. Chaucer wrote this poem to commemorate the death of Blanche of Lancaster, wife of John of Gaunt. He translated The Roman of the Rose. Other early works were The House of Fame and Annelida and Arsite. He wrote Parliament of Fowls, also known as the Parliament of Birds, The Legend of Good Women and Troilus in Crusade, when he was Customs Comptroller of London. The Parliament of Fowls is in the form of a dream vision in rhyme royal stanza and contains one of the earliest reference to the idea that Saint Valentine's Day. The Legend of Good Women is also a poem of dream vision by Geoffrey Chaucer, which is the first work in English to use the iambic pentameter or decasyllabic couplets, which he later used throughout the Canterbury Tales. In the Legend of Good Women, Chaucer narrates 10 stories of virtuous women in 9 sections. Troilus and Crusade is an epic poem in rhyme royal which tells the tragic story of the lovers, Troilus and Cresside, in the backdrop of the siege of Troy. John Lydgate. The monk and poet John Lydgate wrote about 145,000 lines in his lifetime. On the Troy book by Latin writer argues that Langland moved beyond Chaucer's Knight's Tale and his Troilus. The Siege of Thebes is a shorter chivalric epic. In Chaucer's A Monk's Tale, there is a brief catalogue of the vicissitudes of fortunes which offer a hint of what Lydgate was supposed to write in Fall of Princes. Another work of repute is Life of Our Lady, which contains 5,932 lines. Now let's have a short look on the questions and answers. Who hailed Chaucer as the first finder of our fair language? John Dryden. Which Middle English poet acquired the title of Orator Regius? John Skelton. According to the wife of Bath, what do women most desire? Sovereignty over their husbands. How many women's stories have been narrated by Geoffrey Chaucer in the Legend of Good Women? 10. Which of the 16th century poem is a sequel to The Fall of Princes by John Lydgate, The Mirror for Magistrate? Thank you for watching. I hope this video is beneficial to you. Please support by subscribing, liking and sharing so that we can continue with the next sections. Thank you. Have a nice day.